Okay, so I guess we can just start. So welcome everybody. Welcome to the inter-Co-operability masterclass as part of the AECtech 2021, the autumn version, I guess. So yeah, I, I guess I would like you to welcome you to our session, which is it's going to be let's say it's almost a part two for us from what we looked at the summer version of AECtech. But don't worry, for those of you that didn't attend, we're going to cover all that ground and make sure that we, pick it from where we sort of left it and dive a bit deeper to a discussion we have sort of opened here in terms of how we can start looking into some, let's say, data-rich immersive environments. So just to begin with a quick round of introductions, I guess I can just start with myself and introduce the rest of the team. I'm Tsakiridis. I'm the studio computational manager here at Grimshaw, London. I'm spearheading, let's say, the efforts of the computational design teams in terms of how we provide project support to our architects, anything with regards to their upskilling, as well as looking into some of our research initiatives, mainly around DFMA, advanced fabrication, as well as data-driven processes. And with me, I've got Justyna, Szychowska, and Paris. Justyna, Paris, do you want to unmute yourselves and introduce?
Yes, hi everyone, I'm Justyna and I work at Grimshaw as a computational design specialist. And I guess I work together with Georgios and Paris on all sorts of computational workflows, starting from project support through automation, interop. So different things I'm doing in Paris.
Paris, I don't think we can hear you. Can you? Okay. So Paris will just join in a second. I think Ring Central just crashed. Let's see,
Good beginnings.
The world, yeah, the standard stuff of what we've been going through in the past 1 year and a half, I guess, as a global village. So I think Paris will introduce himself in a second. I'm just gonna share my screen and hopefully take you through some of, let's say, a quick introduction on what we're going to be looking at. Right, let me know. Can you all see my screen? Right, yes. So give me just a second.
Right. Yes. Hello from me again. I'm so sorry. My rings and crashed. Yeah. So I'll be trying to introduce myself as well. My name is Paris Nikitidis. I'm an XR developer here at the Grimshaw London office. Yeah, and as my colleague said, we're mainly working around introducing some of the XR capabilities to the design teams, also helping them deploy and produce their projects with the help of XR. And yeah, in the general, I'm responsible developing most of the XR initiatives here in the office. So yeah, that's a quick introduction from me, and happy to start going deep into our workshop today.
Fantastic, thank you, Paris. So before before we begin with the more general stuff, I guess we can start with a technical dive on the GitHub repo. We've shared the link with you. We've also added it to our G drive. Hopefully you can already see my screen. So this is the GitHub repo. If you have already accessed it, first of all, apologies for sharing that a bit later, but hopefully all this is recorded and this recording will be available to everybody. It has quite an onerous, let's say, list of tech that we will be using. A lot of that, to be honest, I guess it's, it you might already have access to. Like, we're going to be using Revit 2020, but this is optional in a way, and Rhino 7 as well. It's sort of optional. The important thing has to do with the reflective view. So uh, if by any chance you have it already downloaded, the only thing you can do is to log in with the login data we've provided here in the chat of the meeting. Otherwise, you just quickly download the installer and run through that. And then we've got some instructions about cloning this repository for those of you that are more familiar with GitHub. If you're not, again, this has a very detailed kind of set of instructions on how you can do this. This is the Unity project we will be sort of diving in. And an additional, let's say, component to that is also Speckle. So if you already have an account on the standard, let's say the default Speckle server, that's perfect. We can already use it. If you don't, again, it's super fast. Just install Speckle Manager and create your own Speckle account. Just need an email. Yeah, I think, let us know, I mean, in the chat if you have any sort of questions about any of the installation of, what's required. We're going to take you through every step, to be honest. So hopefully it's going to be very clear for everybody.
Yeah, and I think as well, we'll start with first the theory session. So it will be like half an hour of the theory, or even an hour. And after that, we could make like extra 10 minutes to set up all the installs if you would like to install all of it. And again, apologies for sending that super late.
So right. So let me just share my screen again. Right, so interoperability, magic word, I guess, that sits there is interoperability. It's one of the areas that we're mostly interested in within DT. And I just mentioned the word DT. So what does it stand for? It stands for Design Technology, Grimshaw Design Technology. So we're a team of specialists looking after implementations of BIM, computational design, extended realities, data-driven processes, urban computation, etc. Within Grimshaw, we support our projects, but we also, as we said, kind of look into the more emerging, let's say, fields of research within AC. For the purpose of this masterclass, and also for the masterclass that we sort of, as we said, did in the summer, we use as a case study this project, the Grimshaw project, which is the Bath School of Arts and Design. And it's a very interesting project for several reasons. First of all, because of the fact that originally was built as the Herman Miller factory from Nicholas Grimshaw himself back in the mid 70s, right? And it's this seminal project that showcased the power of module-based construction and the flexibility that this brings, not only in terms of construction and delivery, but also in the architectural, let's say, language that it can be developed, and all this richness of activities that it can host, to the point that Herman Miller Factory, 30 years later, right, it was transformed into the Bath School of Arts and Design, right? And in light of all these discussions that have been happening for quite some time, and hopefully we see that the whole world now is paying attention around sustainability and around reuse and refurb, and how important that is into making sure that we reduce dramatically our embodied carbon and the carbon emissions, etc. We consider this as a great case study in a way to explore, actually the tools that one can deploy, if you want, from a design technology perspective, to steer some of these conversations and to make sure that towards certain, the paths that we want to, and also how we can, in a way, with the power of the tools, bring more people to engage in that discussion. So obviously a huge part of that first sort of, as we said, like workshop that we did in the summer was focusing around the environmental analysis, right? Which is it's an aspect that is super important for the work that we do, but also I guess it's something that kind of within the industry, I guess it's like a point of reference. And one of the aspects that we have sort of identified, or the issues, is that whilst it's within the circles of specialists, it's a very commonplace to have all these, the data that is produced and it's discussed. But at the same time, once you start engaging with people who don't necessarily have the background, for example, the project stakeholders, the client or the public, um, there starts to be created a sort of gap, let's say, between how you can communicate some of these concepts, which are actually vital for the strategies that one would follow whilst developing a design, right? At different stages, from the early stage all the way down to how this project gets delivered. So in this prototypical, let's say, platform that we're trying to build, which has to do with how we can create this immersive, let's say, environment where people can engage not only with the design, let's say, in terms of its geometrical fidelity, let's say, in the materiality of it, but actually with the way it performs. We decided to focus on the environmental analysis, and just to prove a point, obviously we looked at radiation and daylight. Um, these, sort of analysis that are in a way uh, very basic, but also very fundamental for every project. So the technology that we're really interested in exploring, we have been interested actually in exploring for some time now, is the Unity Reflect. And basically, for those of you who are not aware, Unity Reflect is this um, new piece of technology developed by Unity, which allows you basically to transfer into Unity data from AEC clients like Revit, for example, and Rhino, not only in terms of geometry, as we said, but also in terms of the metadata they hold, right? There are two flavors, let's say, of this platform: Reflect Review and Reflect Develop. And today we're going to have an opportunity to look at both of these. Let's say Reflect Review is what you get off the shelf, and it can be used by anybody. It's a standalone platform that just gets installed, which is the one that you should be having if you use the installer from the repo. And then we're going to look at Reflect Develop, which is actually basically unpacking the Reflect technology within a Unity project and really looking into, under the hood and really diving into the data structures and making sure that you have access. And from there, you can start building your own world within Unity and start doing all sorts of interesting things that hopefully we're going to showcase today, and then anything else you yourselves might add. So in a way, if we wanted to summarize what we did in July, the title of the workshop was called Interop Cubed, because it had, let's say, 3 steps of interoperability. The first one was looking into how we can get information from Revit into Rhino using the technology of Rhino.Inside. This is out of the scope of today's workshop. For those of you who are more interested in learning about Rhino.Inside, there's a lot of information from McNeil. It's basically a technology that has been developed for a few years now, and it allows literally Rhino to be running, let's say, inside other applications that are sort of .NET framework. So in a way, the first argument was like, if everybody's now within, or at least striving to make sure that all data is consolidated and documented within a BIM model, federated BIM model, let's say in a platform like Revit, how do we make sure that we have access to the, let's say, the capabilities that we have in terms, for example, of environmental design, which might come from a different platform, for example, through Ladybug tools, right? Which exist within the Grasshopper, let's say, territory. So we showcase a workflow where you bring information like basically, geometry from Revit into Rhino using Rhino.Inside, and then you use Ladybug to quickly get, and Honeybee to get quickly your radiation analysis and your daylight analysis. So that was step one. And then using Reflect, which we're going to do actually today, we push all this information. So from Revit, we push the information into Reflect, into Unity, basically. And from Rhino as well, we push all that information. And then we start developing this sort of immersive environment, right? So what we showcased was a simple environment, let's say, Unity environment where you had the BIM geometry with all the materiality and the light conditions and everything that actually Reflect allows you to have, and we're going to explore it in a few minutes ourselves. And on top of that, we started building, let's say, a more data-driven process and visualization. So whilst bringing the environmental analysis information, in this case, the simple radiation for the glazed facade units, we were able actually to pull that information, let's say how much radiation does each of these panels have, and present it through a dashboard inside Unity. And then at the same time, we had this very nice little simple script that basically allowed you to query, let's say, the data points of daylight based on the proximity, like how close you are to the data point of daylight. And again, that value would be displayed on the dashboard. So that was, so these are, let's say, the three platforms that also we'll be looking at today. We've got Revit, we've got a model in Revit, we've got a model in Rhino, let's say, and we've got Unity Reflect, right? And this is the, let's say, a synopsis of the workflow. In more, let's say, technical terms, you've got your Autodesk model through Rhino.Inside, you bring it into Grasshopper, you run your Ladybug tools, and then all of that gets pushed into Unity Reflect, which actually ends up in Unity, and you've got your visualization of data and actually some immersive application through VR and AR. Now, this was what happened in the past, and we wanted, in a way, to just push with the opportunity that the core team gave us to be part of these masterclasses again, and kind of see if we can, push the whole idea of collaboration, let's say, once you are in this Unity environment. And this comes in a way from the learnings, let's say, we've got from the day-to-day experience, which I guess it certainly builds on some of the projects and the experiences we have from Grimshaw, but at the same time, I think it sort of reflects a great part of what the whole AEC industry is looking at the moment. So we have all these complex projects that we're working on, and we've noticed that there is always, in terms of the process, there's this duality. There is the representational aspect of let's say, of these models and the designs, which have to do with, as we said, like client engagement, etc. And we've got the other side of the coordination, let's say, which is happening in all sorts of other platforms, which has to do with how do you progress that design, right? And this coordination usually involves people being in models and literally screens, making markups, etc. And these two are two separate environments, and there are probably good reasons for them, but we sort of wanted to challenge ourselves and ask, okay, is there a way we can actually integrate that? Because it seems that with the technology that the opportunities, let's say, that the Reflect technology provides, we might have now the capability to start integrating things together, right? So in a way, we wanted to look at once, like, if there is a capability, once you're in Reflect, to start closing the loop, to foster a collaborative process, let's say, of design development inside Reflect, and start bringing some of these data back to the platforms that they started, right? So this is, in a way, the loop that we're going to be looking in today. Now, appreciate that the fact that Reflect is a work in progress project for Unity as well. So there is, the guys developing that, they have a very clear, let's say, public roadmap that you can always go and check online in Unity's web pages. Well, we just wanted to, and there is certainly a lot of capability at the moment over there. We just wanted to see how we can just push the tech in the spirit of the hackathon as well. That we know it's like very appropriate, let's say, for this AECtech event. To just see if we can close that loop by introducing another, let's say, very famous at the moment, very useful and really disruptive in a way, technology that has been introduced for some time, which is Speckle. So in a way, this is a snapshot of the workflow that we're going to be looking in today. So we will have the Revit model, our Rhino model, let's say, which is this is what holds the information, the geometry information, let's say, and all the metadata. This is what holds the analysis, let's say, the environmental analysis. We're going to push it and Reflect, take it from Unity, and then we're going to see how we can start running, let's say, a prototypical version of what a coordination process would look inside Unity, and try to start sharing these, let's say, comments and annotations, both within the Reflect environment, but actually start making them available, let's say, into the rest of the ecosystem by using Speckle, right? So hopefully, I mean, hopefully that's something interesting. We're very excited actually to have built that, let's say, prototype and have that in our hands. We're really looking forward to what people can do with it. Would be very happy to see if anybody of you will be interested in taking that further during the hackathon over the weekend. So yeah, I guess with that we can just start diving into the technical side of it. Are there any sort of immediate questions so far?
Okay, hi everyone. So we'll just quickly go through what's on our GitHub repository. As I mentioned at the beginning, there are like a few things that it's good if you have installed if you want to follow the workshop. There was a little bit of confusion with the list of participants. I guess that's why I think we tried to send email today or yesterday. I don't know. But the link I will send again the link in the chat. It's as well the Slack channel, but I will send it now and actually share my screen so I can quickly go with you through that. Okay, can you see my screen? Great. So we essentially need three things to install. The first one will be Speckle Manager, and having Speckle account, it takes a minute to install. If you don't have it, you can just so on this GitHub, everything is linked. So to every install file, you can just click on it and it will direct you to install file. So first one will be Speckle Manager. So if I click it, it will just direct me to a download link. It's very light, so it takes a second to set up. Then the Unity version. So if you already have Unity, I would say if it's 2020 or above, just stay with yours and try to run it on your. If you don't, you will find the link here as well. This one might take a few minutes, but I guess if you want to install it now, probably now would be a good time. So we have now like 10 minutes or so to go through that and maybe solve some issues. And the last thing is Reflect Review. So again, just click on installing and uninstalling section. This will just direct you to a website with a link. So again, you just get it. This is super light as well. It will take a few minutes to install. So those are the three components. The login to your Unity we provided in the chat. I'm not sure if you joined like after it was sent. Can you still see the history of the chat? But we might want to, yeah, let me know if you don't see in the chat the login details to Reflect. We'll send them again, but they are there.
Could you send them again, please?
Yes. Paris. Okay, great. So they should be now there. And yeah, that's practically it. The last thing that you need to do is after you have those three elements, yeah, Revit 2019 and Rhino 7 you can have, but you don't really need them. After you have it, you need to clone this repository. So again, this is a quite detailed instruction. So it depends if you used GitHub before or not. If you haven't, you might need to install first Git. And if you haven't used GitHub before, I suggest getting the Git desktop, which is linked as well, because it provides like a user-friendly interface to manage your Git repositories. And again, you just have instructions how to navigate in a Git desktop, how to clone the repository. So you just navigate to file and clone. And if you provide this address, you will automatically get it to your computer. We need to do it through clone because it's a large file system on GitHub. So that means that you can't just get a zip of it, unfortunately. So we need to clone this repo. And yes, so basically what you are getting from GitHub will be our Unity project. So once we have it, that's where we open the Unity project, right? So yeah, I would say right now, if anyone is going through that right now and have any issues, I would say let's spend like a few minutes trying to sort it. And after that, we can proceed with the workshop.
Sorry. Yes. So yeah, a couple of things on the chat. Yes, unfortunately, Reflect is not available for Mac yet. Yeah, sad face indeed. For those Mac users. There is, yeah, it's just posted also the verification code. John, I think it worked for you, right? So it should be okay. I guess it will work for the rest of you. Let us know if it doesn't. I'm wondering, like, I think I'm just gonna start sharing the Revit file. By the way, you can find the Revit content on the G Drive. So we've actually shared a part of, let's say, the Bath School of Arts and Design model. With enough information there, so we can just, you know, go ahead and power through with the workshop. So Revit 2020 is the version we have tested on, let's say. So I can't guarantee for any version prior to that. We definitely know it works for 2021, but yeah. So yeah, it hasn't been tested for 19. That's why we recommend 2020. So, I mean, once you access the model, you should be able to see something like this. It's basically, you will notice that it's half the building. The rest is there, you know, literally for the simplification of the workshop. The rest is there as massing. So you have sort of, in a way, to imagine that this modular facade gets wrapped around the building. But I guess it's more about like, it's less about the completion of the design. It's more about the actual concept of the workflow that we're presenting. So from that model, we can already see these are from that modular facade system, these are the glazed units that we were interested in understanding. What is the direct sun, right? They're getting. Because if there is an argument that this is a modular facade, it means that you can actually kind of swap them, if you want, swap these glazed units for opaque units, and make sure that as you transition, let's say, from a building that used to be a factory to a building that's going to be, let's say, a factory of knowledge and art and creativity, the requirements change, right? So in a way, the lighting requirements change, the actual performance of the buildings changes. And this, you know, so the question remains there: how can you communicate that to, for example, a client or a bunch of students who are interested to understand how their building performs and why these design decisions have been taken? So when we talk about Reflect, basically, once you install it and you install the client as well, right? So when you install Reflect, it will prompt you a screen that will just going to ask you to install clients. As we said, it's available for Revit, for Rhino, I think for SketchUp, Navisworks, BIM 360, of course, yes. And they keep on expanding, to be honest, the clients. So as we said, it's work in progress. So in here, you can already see, like at the top right, I already have a new menu, which is called Unity Reflect. And to be honest, the process is really straightforward. Like once I click here, the button, it will ask you basically to sign in. So here at the top right, you can see, you know, this is the account that I'm using at the moment. And oh, you can't, okay, sorry, let me just share my whole screen then. Do you see now? Great. So again, for those of you that weren't able to see it, I literally just clicked on that Reflect button, and the Reflect dashboard launches automatically, right? So this is the list of projects. This is the list of projects that have been pushed into Reflect, you can flick through the organizations. At the moment, this particular account has access to this organization. That means that you can have access to multiple organizations. You have your own one, you can have it on other organizations that you set up with all the different people or entities, let's say, that you're collaborating. You can already see in terms of the location of the, so let's select actually a project here. So this is the project that this is the Bath, right, School of Arts and Design, that we have already pushed before, but we're going to do it now just to kind of show you like how straightforward and easy it is, and relatively fast, to be honest, for the amount of information that we're going to be pushing. Off the shelf, you kind of get 3 different options in terms of where you want to push that model, right? There is a first option where you push that locally into your machine. You can push that over your local network, or you can push it on the cloud. And if you're more interested into this, you can always go back and talk to the Reflect guys, basically, and they can talk to you about the different options they have in terms of cloud storage, etc. Now, you can already see that I can share my project, and that means that I can have other people joining in, right? And then we can talk a bit about that as well. So in a way, that's the, let's say, the standard navigation or like the standard, functionality of the Reflect window. Now, if I want to actually push geometry, if you just close that for a second, you can see here that there are only 3 options here. So as I said, it's relatively straightforward. There's this one, which is called export. Kind of does what it says on the tin. It exports the platform, the content of what you have on the project to Reflect. So just hit export. Has anybody, by the way, managed to install Reflect? Just say yes or no or not. Just have an idea. Right, so here, actually, you see I've clicked export, and it prompts again the Reflect button, and I had the Reflect window, and I've got a few options. The first one is obviously to create a new project if that hasn't happened. So because we already have a project, I think I'll just select this one, and I'll just, or you know what, I might just create a new one. Test AECtech day. So this project has been created, and now I'm just gonna hit export. You see, it actually says that there's no local published history because I haven't pushed anything yet. So whilst I hit export, it's gonna be, it's not gonna take long. I'm wondering if the whole sharing screen on Ring Central kind of affects it. We'll see. That's the beauties of, all right, there you go. Interesting, sorry. Well, I'm wondering. Let me just try again. Just push it here. You mean on the same project? Absolutely. Okay, so you can see, on the bottom of my window, it has already started exporting, already 33%. Maybe a couple of minutes. Obviously that part is dependent on the amount of information you're trying to push. To be honest, we've sort of tested it over here with a few, some serious projects, in terms of the amount of information they hold. It seems to be performing quite nicely, to be honest. We're gonna dive a bit later into the weeds. Get into the weeds of how Reflect works. I think in terms of how the optimization that the people in Unity have done with regards to how data is sort of packaged and transferred over. And we can touch also upon some of the geometry optimizations they've done, which I think is super crucial. For all of those of you who have tried in the past to export geometry from Revit, I'm sure you've had all sorts of interesting experiences with the meshes that you get out of it, or the quality, let's say, of the geometry that you get. It's very nice to see that now there is a straightforward, let's say, pipeline that creates models that are, let's say, friendly for an ecosystem, a game engine ecosystem like Unity, for example. I think Ring Central is pushing it a bit.
Yeah, I think it's all coming together to the internet connection here, but yeah, I'm gonna.
Oh, sync. Yeah. So yeah. So good point. While I'm waiting here, we can actually talk about the third button here, which is called sync, and I mean, kind of gives as well, sort of already from the title, what it does. Basically, once you push your project into Reflect, you can have the option of having it live synced with the Revit model, right? That means that any change you're doing on the Revit model, it automatically syncs on Reflect, right? And that's where it becomes really powerful in terms of coordination. It makes, in terms of making sure that you've got the latest version of the process. This is where of the model. This is where I think the Reflect tool allows us to really have a very integrated platform without having to export all the time. And it also poses these open questions, you know, when we talk about like closing the loop. When do we want to close the loop? At which point? Do we want to be live synced? You know, do we want to be affecting the BIM model? Do we want to have sort of secondary pipeline? So yeah, and actually, because Reflect has inherently a delta sort of functionality, each time you do an update, it doesn't push the whole geometry, but just the elements that have changed, right? So it recognizes it's like it's the delta, as we say, right? So what's the difference, let's say, between the previous state and the new state? So
maybe I can straight up jump into Reflect and start showing the project, right?
I'm wondering, yeah. So I'm just gonna stop sharing and then Paris. Yeah. If you want to jump in onto the Reflect review.
Maybe it's worth mentioning that now we send that now, so Georgios now send the model to our Reflect project. So now we will be opening Unity Reflect Develop or even Unity Reflect, and that's where you can access this project, right? So that's sort of the next step. So we'll be now receiving what Georgios just sent.
All right, you all can see my screen, can you? All right, yeah, so quick introduction again into Reflect. So this is the Reflect environment. We just open the window. When you open the window, you practically come into this page, which is a page that has all the available projects. Yeah, don't mind my account. We keep testing Reflect. I have a lot of projects in here. So yeah, if I can jump back into the project. This is the geometry. This is what comes into Reflect. Actually, in the specific projects, we have pushed a couple of times from a few design software. So there is a part coming from Rhino and like a bunch of parts coming from Revit, actually. A couple of projects, actually, not even just the one. The project that, yeah, as my colleague Georgios mentioned, this is what comes into Reflect from Revit. And I can briefly explain here the interface and how basically Reflect Review works. So yeah, first off, I wanted to second Georgios on his comment before. So actually having this ability to transfer the models into an interactive gaming environment, that is one of the biggest hassles that we as developers trying to overcome usually in our projects. So yeah, big kudos to the Unity team for actually nailing that. Yeah, so in here, we actually are on the Reflect window. There are a couple of options here that I would like to show you. So first off, as my colleague said, on the top window, we have on the top panel, we have a few of the general options about using Reflect. So as my colleague said before, we have the sync button on the top left, together with the folder structure. The folder structure takes you back to the projects, and the sync button is actually enabling the live syncing of the models into the Reflect project. On the right side, you can see that I have some options to actually control my communication within the Unity Reflect, which actually, yeah, some options about my account, which I can see here. ability to actually mute and unmute my mic. So that's actually, it tells us that we have the ability to communicate through Unity Reflect, having the ability to chat with each other and actually follow and use our model interactively in a multiplayer environment space, if that makes sense. This button down here, I think it's an important one, and I would like to talk about this. So Unity has implemented a share link functionality. So actually, any project, if it's not in your organization, you can actually share a link, and participants can join straight up here in this project. Again, Unity Reflect does require Unity Pro and Unity Reflect licenses to run. So again, that is a requirement for you to share a link, and like each participant needs to have Unity Pro and Unity Reflect to join. Yeah, and on the left here, you can see the who else is in this model right now. So I can see someone. So if I go here and follow, yes, let's see. Oh, someone was here. Yeah, they just left. Right. So I'm gonna keep explaining here on the Reflect. So Reflect has it's a very well developed product, I will say. So they have a lot of functionality in here. I will start by showing basically what Georgios described before. So the actual BIM information and metadata coming from Revit. So I have the ability to select on an object, for example, these panels or one of these panels, and I can actually see the metadata information that's coming from Revit. So the actual ID, information about the document, the family type of this element, and actually all the information coming from the BIM model in Revit. Yeah, you can see it's very well detailed, and like all the information are coming in. This is actually very, very helpful for us. And as you're gonna see from here on, we actually have used this information to prune and extrude some of more design aspects of this building. Yeah, so I can see someone is in here and selecting a few objects. This is the good thing about having a multiplayer environment. Yeah, we can both experience the space here. Yeah, the movement is really, really typical in game engines. You can move with the arrow keys and and your mouse. Yeah, so if I can continue with Reflect UI here, basically there are a few more important features that they have. So instead of selecting and viewing the metadata information, I can also change the time of the day and lighting and settings of the model. That gives a little bit more in depth into the designers actually seeing their projects in different times of the day and experiencing each space differently. And a few more here on the left side. On the left side, actually, I can see I can filter through layers and different elements of the model. That's this panel right here. Yes, again, I have few information about changing the texturing of all the model, or like enabling light data coming from Revit. Yes, I just saw that's the lighting settings. Two more things I wanted to discuss here. One was a really nice tool that our architects are using quite often. It's a measuring tool, so you have the ability to actually set up measurements within Unity Reflect, and that's a more interactive way of actually seeing how your model behaves in the space. I've said that. And one of the final and one of the newest additions that Reflect made was the ability to add comments on top of objects. So if you see here, I already have a comment already in here, but I can click somewhere in the model and actually assign one of my annotations. Object here, another annotation. Ooh, here on the right for some reason. Behaving greatly. See? Okay, I'm going to restart my like. Okay, apologies for that. I wanted to show you the annotations. That was, again, I'm just going to talk about this very briefly. So basically, Reflect just brought in the functionality to leave comments in space. Yeah, this was again, this is a beta version for now. It's not very well developed at the moment, but Reflect has a it's on the roadmap to actually evolve this annotation system, and I think this is what gave us the was a starting point for us, like how we can actually implement those annotations into a more sophisticated design process, if I may. Yeah, last thing again about Reflect would be the ability to actually view your model instead of an interactive 3D environment, also in VR space and AR. This is building functionality in Reflect. So depending on the device that you're accessing your model, you can see your model also in AR, for example, in mobile devices, or in VR if you have a VR device connected to you. There's also walk around and fly mode. This is the way that you can navigate through your model. Again, this is all very helpful for actually, yeah, giving a sense of scale and getting some nice views and pictures of your model. And I think, yeah, I think I can leave it at this point, right? Is there anything that I've missed, guys, or anything that I would like to go through? And again, that's for everyone. Please feel free if you have any questions while I'm talking. Please feel free to open your mics and yeah, let's start away.
I would only mention that if you have time, we'll try to showcase the VR as well with the headset. So hopefully you'll see, what is the experience. I think we have like allocated time a bit later. So yeah, you'll be able to see how that looks.
Absolutely, and I mean, as Barry said, I think annotations were the first thing that we sort of saw, and it kind of it intrigued us to see, okay, how far, where can we go with that? Because obviously, if anybody has ever participated in a model coordination sort of process, we know how hectic it could be to just go through in a way, provide all these annotations, and then what can you make of it, right? What can you make of all these markups that you create? Not necessarily through an official, let's say, kind of BIM platform review process, but more within a more informal, if you want, design session, where, as we said, it might involve external stakeholders, clients, etc. I'm not. Give me just a second. I think so. We showed the comments. Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that you can explore with regards to the reflect functionality, and as we said, the guys keep on adding stuff. An interesting feature is, for example, because you can see the avatars of other people around. There is also a way to, like, that's a quick one, I guess. You can just follow the camera, right? So we've seen that this is handy when you've got a group of people there. So rather than just having everybody just looking at different things, you can just make sure that everybody follows exactly what you want to see, which is a more, let's say, curated experience of exploring the design that you have. Another super kind of interesting feature. Okay, so with that, I mean, sort of, Paris kind of hinted that on that model that we had on Reflect, we have pushed actually Rhino information, right? But it's like a good question, like, okay, how did that happen? So I'm gonna very quickly show you as well how straightforward things are, and probably start talking about the opportunities that we sort of saw on Reflect, in terms of utilizing some of its features to start showing more interesting kind of information. So as we said, it's not part of this workshop, but this is, let's say, the radiation analysis that came out of these glazed units that were part of the Bath School of Arts, right? So literally all we did was, with Rhino.Inside, just isolate those panels, run a radiation analysis. So we've got this we've got this standard, let's say, output, the standard mesh output from, let's say, Ladybug, right? As we said, it's not in the scope of the workshop. Hopefully, a lot of you will be familiar. If not, there is a lot of, to be honest, like, there are a lot of resources online that you can follow, and you can see exactly how you can get a radiation analysis mesh from particular geometry. Now, there is something interesting about the fact that obviously, as we said, there is a Rhino client. So for example, if I just type like Unity Reflect GUI show, I get exactly the same. Do you see my win? Do you still? Yeah, okay, right. So you still see here that I've got a very similar window to what I have inside Revit. Same functionality, I guess, apart from the syncing aspect. You can start the the Unity Reflect from here. You can fire it up from here, and it prompts exactly the same window that we had before. And you can actually export, right? So if you click export, it exports the Rhino content, right? Now, interestingly enough, if we were to export this in Unity, you can actually send the mesh, which is already a step, right? Maybe that's, it kind of already gives some level of information, right? So inside Unity, you not only have the geometry, as I said, but you've got something that indicates a level of performance. Like you've got an element that points to the way the design is performing. But in a way, what we wanted to do is similar to how on the Revit side, you actually get the metadata of the geometry that you send. It's not just the BIM, it's not just the geometry of the BIM element, it's the BIM element with all its metadata. We wanted to sort of replicate that process with Rhino as well. And the lowest hanging fruit there is the functionality of attributes, which has been available for quite some time in Rhino, right? So as we know, in a Rhino object, you can always just, literally can create an object, and you can always come and add attributes, right? So you can say this is, the air, the volume, let's say, and then this is the key. And then if I actually know the volume, I can actually just type it here, and then this object now has an attribute assigned to it, right? That talks about the volume of it. So following that logic, we came up with like a workflow that we take the value of each of the data points of that mesh, of the radiation mesh, right? And provide an attribute that we can send over to Unity so that we can use it as metadata, right? And then we can, we can use these values to do all sorts of things like the dashboard that we showed, etc., which we're going to show in a second. So in order to do that, there is a detail, let's say, on how Reflect works, which I think is crucial. With this whole interoperability framework of Reflect, what you can actually do from the different clients is send geometry with metadata. It's not possible, let's say, at this state. And I think it's because of the, let's say, the orientation and the functionality that Unity want to enable, let's say, with Unity Reflect. And the notion, let's say, of building these worlds, these immersive systems, let's say, inside Unity. So long story short, you can't send streams of data other than without having some sort of geometry, let's say, attachment to it, right? So you can send data as long as it's metadata to geometry. So in very simple terms, what we did was to just create those, let's say, probs, literally those simple geometries. It's just spheres, could be anything, right? Doesn't matter what sort of geometries. It's literally the conduit, if you want, of information, right? So each of these spheres actually have an attribute to them, which is exactly the radiation value at this data point, right? So the radiation, so, as the Ladybug has produced that analysis mesh for us, and it has those data points, the value of the data point has been added as an attribute to that sphere, right? Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, we can explain it again. And now with this, we can actually parse that information, send that information, if you want, inside Reflect. And that's how we have, in what Paris showed, and Paris, I don't know if you want to flash it again on your screen, the model that actually has all the geometry that we got from Revit and the metadata, plus this additional mesh with these little spheres, right? Now, whether we choose to present these spheres or not, I guess like this is all, it has to do with the way we want to treat the actual experience in the environment, but it's more about like the proof of the concept, right? What we really want is to have that information inside Unity. Does that sort of make sense, or do we need to kind of talk about these attributes again? Maybe if you just quickly on the chat. Yes, no? Clear? Right, okay. That's good. Anybody else? It's good? Yeah?
Yeah, is there
Maybe
any
include.
restriction on the type of geometry? Like, does it have to be a volume, a surface, like literally anything, any geometry to test?
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that's also a good point, right? So I guess this is where the better understanding we have in terms of like how I guess all game engines, but particularly let's say Unity works. We can also tie that back to exactly the types of geometry that one can send. So we know that in Unity, every geometry there is actually a mesh, right? So technically, whilst you could be pushing, so for example, if I just push now, this is a B-rep, like a closed poly surface, that will be automatically transformed into translated, if you want, into a mesh. So it would land inside Unity as a mesh. And like curves and points do not have a representation, let's say, in the Unity world, and therefore this is not necessarily a type of geometry that you can push at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's why you could see we pick like a. You can see the spheres.
Sorry.
So in each. Yeah, so in the results of the environmental analysis, there's a mesh that is coming from the environmental analysis itself, and we sort of convert it to the spheres. It's literally just an example, just because each mesh has the results for the point from Ladybug. So we just create a sphere as a representation of this point. However, it's only example. You just need to send something that has a volume because the point itself. It can be represented in Unity because Unity just simply doesn't have points, but it could be anything. You could put like triangles, whatever you want. This sphere is just an example of any sort of volume that contains information, right? So each sphere contains information about the rotation results for this specific location.
Great, yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
So I mean, it's an interesting. Let's say, I mean, it's almost like a hack that we figured out that we can actually, through that, you can send any type of information, right? As long as you can hook it up on some sort of geometrical representation, then you can send it to Unity. You can literally have any type of information. We haven't tested yet any sort of real-time connection in terms of like, having some sort of simulation data, let's say that continuously updates in Grasshopper, and seeing if that is, to what extent that can be accommodated through Unity Reflect. That's something probably, open to the community to test. But in terms of processes that are concluded in a way that have a fixed set of values, that is a way we have sort of come up with. It resolves that issue for us. So, in a way, not sure if I'm sharing my screen or.
Really quick question about the data again.
Go ahead.
Can you have as many keys as you want attached to one piece of geometry?
Absolutely. Yeah, okay, absolutely.
Cool.
So in a way, that's how a lot of people are using. We've seen that they use Rhino to produce data that somehow kind of communicates potentially the same content as what you would get from a BIM environment. Again, we do have like within. I mean, I guess this is more like the way we work at Grimshaw. We try to use the right tool for the right job, but attributes in this case have proven really useful. So in a way, if we go back to our previous workflow where the point, sorry, that slide I had actually was correct. We have these piece of information from here, we have that, and we have already pushed them in Unity Reflect, right? So with that, we're ready to kind of jump into Unity. And before we do that, we're just going to introduce, let's say, that final component, which is more like we're going to use it later, but just to make sure that everybody's kind of on the same sort of baseline. We're briefly going to touch upon Speckle. So Speckle, for those of you who might not have heard it before, Speckle is this, as I said, like super useful and very popular interoperability tool, which has been around for a while. And in a way, over here at Grimshaw, we've been following it from its beginnings. What it does is that it provides, let's say, it works as a conduit that connects the platforms, the most famous, let's say, platforms. I guess the ecosystem keeps on expanding by month. Of the platforms that we use within AEC, and basically what it allows you is literally by having an object schema to be able to do convergence, let's say, of information from one platform to the other using Speckle objects, right? Now, the interesting thing to know about Speckle is that the way it works is that all information gets as it leaves, let's say, the environment of one platform, gets packaged into what they call streams. And with Speckle 2, the guys have introduced a very interesting concept of branches. So those of you that are more familiar, let's say, with the Git environment and how we structure, let's say, information so that we can make sure that there is versioning capability. In other words, that we can always go back and track what are the changes that have happened, who has actually done those changes, and in a way, make sure that we have a robust workflow that allows us to have control over the iterations of not necessarily our design, but any type of information we want to be sending. As Justyna showed in the beginning, we need the Speckle Manager. Speckle Manager will allow you to create your account on Speckle. And also it will allow you to control your connectors. With connectors, the Speckle refers to the different clients for the different software, right? So there's a connector, for example, for Rhino, for Grasshopper, for Revit, for Dynamo, all like it's a whole. I mean, if I just go to my actual connector, to my Speckle Manager, you can see there's a whole ecosystem of different connectors that you can actually install and have a go. To be honest, just to give you a quick, let's say, taste of how Speckle works, let's say very simply in terms of, let's say on the Grasshopper side, once you install it, you will be able to see that, I've got my Speckle tabs inside Grasshopper, and you can see that I've got this basic functionality of being able to send and receive streams, right? So let us just try to send something. So this is a typical component that that basically it allows us to have input as actually the data that we want to send as input. So what is it that we want to send? Is it geometry? Is it like values? This is the actual stream that we want to send. So, I mean, very quickly, as I said, let me just try to send that geometry. Just gonna assign all that into a brep. I mean, again, I guess the standard Grasshopper functionality is not within the scope, I guess, of the workshop. If people are not familiar with Grasshopper, I mean, it's a visual scripting interface, very famous. It's been around for some time, for like more than 10 years now. If you haven't, I mean, sort of explored it, I would highly recommend it. Sorry, it seems that Ring Central is driving the laptop a bit crazy. It's not that complex, to be honest, to join like a brep to a data sender. Let me just stop sharing for a second. Might just help it a bit, and then I'll just share again. Sorry about that.
So the main reason why we will be using Speckle is because we are using Reflect to pull the data from different models. However, for now, Reflect can only visualize information. So, it can be in real time and we can build on top of it with Reflect Develop. However, you can't send back any information yet. I know it's on the roadmap, but currently, like your only option to, see all the put models in VR and then make some changes and actually send to model is either your custom development, or we use for the Speckle to sort of, use all the benefits of Reflect, but actually build on top of it. So we use Speckle to actually feedback the information, and we'll be showing that later in details. But basically, that's the main reason why we're talking about Speckle right now, because we wanted to have, sort of interop that goes not only to Reflect, but as well from Reflect back to other softwares.
Right, so you can see Ring Central decided to play ball. So I got my brep, and then I need to create a stream, right, as we said, because as I mentioned, Speckle packages information into streams, right? So I need to create a stream, and I just brought in that create stream component, and it needs to be hooked up to my account, right? And you might have already seen, if you try to use Speckle, you will need to set up your own account, right? Which, as we said, can be accessed from, wait, just give me a second. I'm not sure if I'm sharing the right, and sorry, screen. Right, yeah, screen, yeah, okay. So yeah, from here, as we said, this is your account. So that account is reflected here. If you have multiple accounts, you can always select. This is like a testing environment here. So you see I've got all in this one, which we have created for the purposes of the workshop. So I'm just gonna hook it up here, and then now I'm ready actually to send a stream, right? So I'm just gonna hit send. Right, and now it's done, and you can see that the output of this is actually a URL of my stream. Now, if I share this with other people that I can add them as collaborators, they will be able to see that stream. The interesting thing is that we can actually go and have a look into the web app that Speckle has set, in which you can control, you have full access to your streams, and you can see that they actually have this super nice visualizer. So you can see that this is my geometry here, right, that I've sent. And it's exactly what I was talking about before with regards to the granularity, let's say, of information. You can see that this stream has this object actually that has been added to the stream. It has its ID. I get some information about the volume and the area by default. You can see that this is, in terms of the Speckle schema, this is an object of the type geometry and actually of the type brep. And again, you can see all sorts of information here. I could add collaborators. Through here, I can access also other streams that one has created. And yeah, basically, as Justyna said, this is going to be the reason why we're showing that is because we're going to use the Speckle technology to be able to, once we have the annotation, let's say in the comments and whatever we want to add in this immersive environment, we're going to be able to get it out and start bringing it back to our ecosystem, and kind of leave an open question of what you can do with it. We have some ideas, but would be most likely really keen to hear your thoughts and potentially see your developments even in the next couple of days in the hackathon. Right, so with that, I think we can jump into Unity.
Yeah, my part, let me share the screen. Secure. Yep. You guys see my screen?
Yep.
Right, cool. I see some people asking in the chat about the verification code. If any of you can help with that. I haven't received anything yet, to be honest. I am that. All right, so okay, so Unity, Unity and Reflect Develop. All right, so this is the fun part. All right, so Unity, for those of you who are not familiar with Unity, yeah, Unity is a game engine basically. It's used to develop, yeah, big majority of the games available right now on all like app stores and all platforms. So that's, yeah, it's like a really good product to know. So yeah, I'm briefly gonna talk about the interface here, just for those who haven't used Unity before. So if you can see my window, basically Unity has four main windows, I'm sorry. So we have the game view, which is basically what the game window will be look like. We have the scene window, which is up here. It's a view of your 3D space within Unity. And then we have two more important windows, which is the hierarchy and the project tab. The hierarchy, it's basically the active elements, the active game objects within our Unity scene. And the project window is basically the folder structure of all the assets that make your Unity project. So in that way, maybe I can just briefly talk about the what is a game object. So game object is it's basically an entity within your Unity scene, and as an entity, it can hold different kind of behaviors that can be derived from scripts or behaviors, or they can hold mesh information, um, rigid body, physics behaviors, and pretty much everything that we can imagine its entity in the scene can do. Yeah, so that was a really brief discussion, introduction into Unity. Yeah, for those of you who are not familiar, I would definitely advise you to start looking into that. I think it's yeah, game engines are really picking up these days, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be a big thing, even in our industry in the next couple of years, if not right now. Um, Yes. So at the moment, we're looking at the Unity Reflect Develop project. So this is the repository coming together when you basically acquire a license from Unity Reflect. This is yeah, the basic Reflect repository. It's available online. It's a public repository, and you can get it at any time. In order to use it, as I said before, you're gonna need to have appropriate licenses. Beyond that, yeah, so Reflect develop are parts of three main scenes. So we have the main Reflect scene, and if I can scroll up here and you can see the rest of the scenes, it's these three right here. So we have the basic Reflect scene, which all the main functionality. We have the Reflect AR and Reflect VR scene, which is both responsible for basically showcasing your Reflect projects in AR and VR. Um, yeah, so to talk about Reflect Develop, so as my colleague said before, Reflect has done an amazing work on segmenting and prioritizing the transfer of models of the elements of the model from different design software to the Unity. And I think like this is the biggest win that Reflect can offer. With the use of software called Pictis, that they actually I think one of the best segmentation and model transfer frameworks available right now. With the use of Pixis, Reflect does handle a big variety of information. We have tested here in the office quite big models, and I can say that yeah, Reflect does handle. I can say in the hundreds of thousands of game objects and of meshes to be transferred through design softwares into Unity. And yeah, again, that's a big win for those of you who've ever tried, as my colleague Georgios said before, for those of you who have tried to bring geometry from Rhino or Revit into Unity. That was, I can say, quite a pickle until before that. So yeah, we're happy that we have the ability to use that now. I'm gonna show here. Please. Yeah. So Reflect comes with the Reflect window, which I can see it on here. In this window, basically, you can transfer your models without actually being loaded on runtime. So this is an option that Reflect gives. I'll say additive to the actual transfer that they do on runtime, the application, or when running the application on play mode. But you can also download and import your models into as an asset in your project folder. That gives the ability to actually, yeah, not having the whole Reflect UI and Reflect application running, but you can create your custom ones and just use the Reflect pipeline to transfer your models in. I think this is one of the biggest wins, again, that we can talk about here. Another thing that Reflect Develop has, it's basically a bit of an understanding on how actually this information are coming in. So if I can start running this project, um, we're gonna see that basically I'm gonna take you through really quickly through one of the scripts that we have created on the previous workshop we ran on the summer. So basically, I would just want to touch on one important aspect of this. So basically, it's about this exact part here. So I'm not sure who's familiar with coding. This is basic C# language. Yeah, and this is the main coding language that it's used for Unity. At this point here, just wanted to mention about syncing object binding here. This is the object that comes first, and it's basically the script that handles the importing of each mesh of your model into Unity Reflect. This is one of the best ways and suggested actually to create and basically read through your meshes while they're coming into Unity Reflect. This way you can actually check for your relevant objects, find the available metadata, and actually use them in your application. Right, so if I can go back into my Unity, um, I'm not sure. You guys, were you guys able to see my Visual Studio, or um, I
Visual Studio, no.
all right, so that's something I need to fix. Then. Let me go back and show you that again. Again, now you can see my Visual Studio, I reckon, right? All right. So yeah, I was talking about exactly this kind of line here, and practically I was talking about this specific script, sync object binding. So as I said, this is the suggested way Unity Reflect handles the importing of its mesh. So assigning basically an action, something that will trigger once each model is imported into Unity in order for us to understand and get the information of each of those meshes. So for example, if I can run the project, I can quickly show you where exactly does this live and how the information that we're bringing in from Revit actually looks in our game view. So let this run for a second. Okay, a few seconds. Let's give it some time here. Quick introduction again on the basic hierarchy of the Reflect scene. If you can see, there are a bunch of game objects. Here we are. A few important ones here on the hierarchy. Basically, it's this placement root. The placement root is the game objects that will be the parent of all the information coming into Reflect. So the model information coming into Reflect. So the moment I joined the Reflect project, I could already see that a few people were in there. So Justyna and yours probably. Yes, so we're entering the projects, and I can see my actual mesh models being loaded on runtime. This happened with a very elaborate and clever way, I might say. So Unity does first bring a bounding box to actually resemble where your object will be placed. And while this is transferring the actual mesh information and metadata with it. So if I can navigate myself inside this game object placement root, and within that, the actual root game object right here, you can see basically that I have two projects coming into Reflect. Some delay here. Yeah, so you can also see on the bottom of my game view down here that we are all loading almost 6,000 elements. That's on runtime. You can see the process takes a few minutes actually. But the good thing, as I said, and the clever way that Reflect was actually handling the import is that you can use you can use the game, you can use the application while this mesh information and model information are coming loading in at the moment. So if I navigate myself through one of these three projects that are models that are pushed into this Reflect project, I can navigate into one. Loads. I have some delay here. Can they still hear me?
Yes, yes. So there's a lot of messages about the access code. Um, to the reflect. So yes, sorry for that. I think it expires like every 20 minutes or something like that. We're just trying to disable the need for the code. So hopefully in a few minutes you'll be able to log in without the code. So we'll let you know once it's sorted, so you'll be able to log in.
Right. All right. So yeah, I think I can explain what I was talking about exactly in this window. So all this information, if you see down here on this list, this is all the information coming from the Revit model. So underneath that exact game object, all these available meshes are coming from from the Revit model. So once I click on something, we can actually see that Unity Reflect does add two basic scripts onto that game object. As I said before, it's the sync object binding, which is actually the way they handle the import, and a script called metadata. And the actual metadata is what my colleagues were describing before, and the actual data that we could see when we were selecting an object in Reflect. Um, so right here, we have on the metadata, we have all the information coming from the BIM elements on Revit. So as you can see, all the information are here. Some may not be populated, but all the information is getting transferred through. And I think this is, yeah, this is the main functionality of Reflect in terms of how they handle the model import. Right. Again, if anyone has a question or like want me to go by and run on something again, please let me know or unmute your mics and just ask away. It'd be great. Um, right. Oh, good. All right. Right. So if I can keep going then. Um, right. So the Reflect develop, as I said, yeah, it's a pretty comprehensive way and allows you to develop your own applications within that. And also give you access to most of the actual reflective view functionality for you to either improve or introduce into your own applications. That being said, I think at this point, should I keep going on the unit side? Yeah. What am I missing?
I think we could go to showcase attributes and maybe the dashboard, so a few minutes of what was for the previous workshop. And then ideally, if we have time, let's try to do it in VR.
Sure. All right. Okay. Thank you for that, Justyna. All right. So, yes, as I said, we already showed how the attributes and the metadata, it's coming through the metadata script. So if I can, yeah, just navigate myself into the model. Yes, I think as we showed before, we do have the ability to actually select on an object and actually see the available information down here that's happening on runtime. So while you play the application, you can actually see all the information. Again, this is coming with a live sync option. So again, all changes coming from Revit can be synced live into your game view. Yes. So I think at this point we can show something of the previous workshop, what we developed. So if I can just open this dashboard, that was one of the developments we did in terms of the previous workshop and some of the stuff that we are actually pushing here in the office to use. So here we have a bit of information, and maybe also my colleague Justyna can talk about this for a sec here, what exactly this dashboard is showcasing.
Yeah, so I think Georgios already mentioned that in the beginning in the presentation that for the previous workshop we used Reflect as well, and same as in this example, we're pulling the Revit model from Revit, and then we had environmental analysis in Rhino. We assigned the attributes to our spheres, so that's what we're showing in the Rhino model. And the whole point of that is to bring everything to reflect. And we're thinking like what sort of additional functionality we can actually provide and what we can add to maybe design reviews or the actual design process that Reflect can give us that we were not necessarily getting from other softwares like Rhino or Revit. So what we did for this workshop was we did run the analysis. We imported them to reflect the results of the analysis together with the spheres that are holding the information about the results of the analysis. And we created a dashboard that is providing the information of your local results of the environmental analysis. So basically, what we wanted to achieve is that when you run the analysis in Ladybug, you get a colorful mesh, you get a list of information, so you have more overall results, overview. You have overview of the results. So we wanted to use the functionality of Reflect that allows you actually to, on your computer or in the VR space, to go through the building and explore it, right? That's the main advantage of us having right now VR, to be able to follow participants and actually be in the space and go through it. So we thought like, rather than having this one mesh that is displaying us results of radiation analysis, we might as well read the local results. So I can actually go through my building and understand, okay, are my local conditions good, right? Or so I can understand and see, okay, this room actually doesn't have enough daylight analysis, so it doesn't have enough daylight, so I might need to, add more glazing or just make a design decision that will improve those results. So exactly that's what the dashboard is doing. So once, while you're walking through the building, the dashboard is actually picking up the attributes of the closest point in the environmental analysis, and it's displaying that on the dashboard. So in that example here, you can see that, for example, the daylight factor is 35, so it's we are actually okay. I'll actually talk about the second one because daylight factor refers to the interior, and the second one is referring to the solar radiation. So right now, what this dashboard, I'll actually quickly just annotate. So here we have this, the dashboard with solar radiation, and what you can see here is how the results of this, for the solar radiation for the panel that is the closest to my location. So we're probably this panel, or maybe we can't see it in this view, but while I walk through the building, it will always pick up the closest solar radiation result into display on the dashboard. The result says here's the actual result, and we can see that this is 80% of my average. So I can see that, for example, in this case, we decided that 100% will be our average result, and I can see that, okay, this is 80%. So this is this panel is a bit like lower than my average, but obviously it was something that we implemented ourselves. So whatever we could just have that percentage between the minimum and maximum. It doesn't really, like, we can do whatever we want, but the point is that we just wanted to add this extra level of understanding of environmental analysis rather than just having one big mesh. Just wanted to get this a bit more insight. Yeah, I think I talked enough.
Thank you very much, Justyna. I think that was quite detailed, and thank you very much for explaining that. Yeah, no, in a way, I think yeah, the important part here is that we actually like use those information coming with its mesh to actually yeah, explain more about the design decision and more about the model as it comes right now. So I think this is yeah, part of the model. Georgios?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's what we said before, like once you have the data inside Unity, then you can decide to do whatever you want. Somebody might take it towards the more interactive, let's say, aspect of an immersive environment. This is more about like data visualization. This is a simplified, a very simple, let's say, dashboard that has some basic graphs. We know there's the whole universe out there of how data could be presented, but as we said, it's more about landing the concept here, like the proof of concept, and it's a prototype in this stage. So I guess if we want to jump into the, you know, the aspects of the code, let's say, that will be also useful on the annotation, let's say, functionality. I think that'll be something good to show. And then we can slowly start seeing and understanding, as we said, what are the limitations of annotations at this stage in Unity, like from under the hood, and what Speckle and how we've introduced Speckle and augmented in a way the current functionality, both on the Speckle side and on the Unity side. Okay.
Feel a little bit laggy here. Not sure if everybody can see or hear me.
We can hear you. I think there's a bit of lag on the screen.
All right.
Do you want screen to share again?
Sharing and share again. Oh, there's some delay here. Okay.
Georgios, an update about the unit accounts?
I mean, we're waiting for those settings to be able to be updated.
Paris, do you have this code?
Nope. Last one was 45 minutes ago. I'm crashed, guys. All right. I don't know. Like, I cannot see anything. Let me try to close it.
Sorry, everyone, give us a sec. Paris, just the computer just crashed, so we need a few minutes.
Sorry about that. Hopefully, yeah, Paris is connecting again. Okay, yeah, we can see you. Yes.
Yes, I made it. Okay, I'm sorry. Technology is not always our friend. This is what happens. All right, let me share my screen again. Apologies for that. Oh, okay, and here we are. Let me know when you can see my screen. Okay, all right. Okay, again, apologies for that, guys. Yeah, so yes, so a brief introduction onto today's subject. Yeah, I think you shared enough. So, like, yes, our main focus was introducing a new system of applying and making annotations on Unity Reflect, and actually closing the loop between like not having only one way transfer of information and models, but that like create a two-way loop, a bi-directional transfer back to some of the design softwares, and how this is exactly where Speckle comes into play. Yes, so let's talk about the annotations. So in the way we examined how Unity created the annotation system, and what we did was to basically create a workaround, uh, if you want, maybe our own annotation system. And this was, yeah, we try to basically target it on how the users here at the office and like our architects are using Reflect, and like we try to have it, in a way that it's going to be user intuitive for you to use. We can go into play mode. That may take a while. All right, here we are. Okay, right, jump back into the project. And yeah, there's a little bit of some time here to load everything. So yeah, our main way of handling annotations, our in-house development here for the annotations, was actually to assign comments, text comments, and some other elements like like 3D graphs, or like 3D VR drawing meshes on actual model elements. So this is loading at the moment. I can start going closer. Okay. So as you can see on the background, some of the elements are still loading at the moment. Um, yes, I'm just going to give it a few more minutes, a few more seconds here just to load everything. Um, so yeah, the annotations here for us, we used some of the features that Reflect offers. So the ability to select items uh, like that. I can select any item as we saw before in my model. Um, and for us, we saw this as an opportunity to actually have users use the functionality, use this feature to select objects and actually leave comments that are attached on that specific object. So we introduced this little button. So if you see, I'm gonna start from the side toolbar here. So if you can see, the second to last item down here was the dashboard that we used. And for the time being, I'm using the select tool, which is this little cube right here. We introduced this UI button on the top left of this window, which is the actual comment, annotational comments. If you can see, we created this simple, real simple window panel here to practically assign my comments. So I have an object selected, and I can say that um, I want to leave a comment saying like more of these, and also assign. Yeah, we thought that it would be good to have someone like as an assignee that annotation, so we can actually direct people as more of a as my colleague said before, as more of a coordination software to actually have an assignee to actually look at this comment. So I'm gonna say some kind of comment here. And this way, it's like how we figure out that it's going to be one of the most user intuitive ways to leave comments that are actually assigned onto specific objects in Reflect, while the basic Reflect annotations were actually spatial annotations. They were just like yeah, points in space with some text element attached to them. So for us, the annotations were yeah, they needed to come attached to a specific object. So on that, um, I will use the receive button we have down here on the right. Maybe just give me a quick sec. I need to here. This guy.
In Paris, maybe you click receive. We should just quickly say about Speckle because this is already touching on the Speckle. I know. Okay, let's receive it.
Sorry guys, that's on me. I'm coming back. I'm
So
sharing my
you're
screen
not
again.
sharing.
Right. All right. So here we are. So if I click.
Yeah, you're breaking a bit.
Okay. So the left button there on the side toolbar was actually again something that we introduced here on the Reflect UI. It was the button to actually receive. All right. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me? So okay. So the receive button, that button down here was practically our way of prompting the Reflect to actually receive all of our Speckle annotations that are currently online. Yeah, so I'm not sure if we have any there yet. Let me click again. Sure. All right. So as I did before, I'm going to leave one of these special comments there in this object. Yes. Okay. So here we are. So this is how our annotations are actually looking in Reflect. So I can select that one. So you can see we introduced that with one of these big annotation icons. So it's like clearly visible what have been annotated and whatnot in the Reflect project. Again, this is just one of the ways that we could actually tackle that. But this is an annotation attached to a specific object. We have introduced also another window that you can actually see all the active annotations at the project at this moment. Yeah, so you can see this one. I can actually click on there and select the object that was at the point. I hope that is clear enough on like UI and like looks of it. And again, if anyone has a question, please feel free to discuss away. If not, I think we're at a good part. Maybe I can jump into the code of how this is actually working.
Exactly. I think if everybody has gotten like the sort of the principle of how this thing works, of how you leave a comment and that comment gets sent with Speckle and gets received in a way. We can just jump into the details, let's say, of the code itself. And so yeah. Okay.
All right. So in order to introduce this functionality into Reflect, there was a few things that we needed to handle. Can you see my Visual Studio now? All right. I need to share again. All right. Can you see my Visual Studio now? All right. Okay. So if I close it, all right. So the way that we started looking at this problem was actually to introduce a script called Annotation Handler. And what this is actually doing, I'll first look at it here on the inspector actually. So this is the script Annotation Handler. This was one of the main scripts here for the annotation feature. If you can see here, what we did was actually traverse through the existing BIM information coming from Revit, and we created this really simple editor UI here in order for the user or us, like whoever uses this application, to actually select the available data that they want to see on each of these the available data metadata coming from BIM that we want to include in the annotations. So at this point, we have selected identity data. You can see this is a list of all the available metadata information coming from Revit, and we can have yeah, type of the actual data information. This is again, this is the information that will be included in the annotation class to be sent out through the through Speckle. Again, here in the editor UI, we have a visible object, which is the actual selected object I have right now. So if you can see here, that was the comment I added before, more of these trees, some assigning name. We do not have any annotation mess, but that would be something that we could add, you know, just produce something on top of this annotation and be included in the transfer. And as I said before, this is all the information that are actually copied from the BIM information of the model into the annotation assigned on top of that model. Yes, if I can. The second script that we introduced here was this one called Annotation Manager. So the Annotation Manager, it's practically, yeah, a self-explanatory name, but it's the manager that handles the collection of annotations coming through Speckle into Reflect and the other way around. So yeah, if I can come back into the code again. For this to work, we had to do three main things, I would say. So the three main things were actually reference, having some scene references of the actual Reflect UI elements in order to trigger specific actions. So the select tool is something that we need to trigger every time we select one of the annotation objects. We also have a few prefabs created of the icons that we are using and the actual annotation windows attached into the scene, the UI, in the UI scene. Yeah, scroll through that. You're gonna see that basically we have this is some of the properties of this script are actually yeah, some scene references, and on top of that there are basically some organization settings to assign basically traverse the elements to be placed correctly into the hierarchy and into our scene. So yes, I'll say I'll start off from here. So assigning the selected object. So this is something that we needed to go through in order to assign it to make an annotation on the selected object that we have. First off, we needed to actually check if the object has already an annotation. So if I select an object that already has been annotated, I should be able to see that annotation in my window. So this process is happening right here. In order to do that, we actually had to traverse through each of the metadata information of that specific object and actually try and see if any of the if the ID of the element is actually stored in our annotation storage class, so within our annotation manager. In order to do that, we cross-check the two elements, the element ID and all the IDs that we have stored in our annotation manager in order to determine if one of the selected object has already an assigned annotation. And if we do find one, I think this is the main part. We actually display the annotation of that object into the panel. Continuing, we worked on assigning and basically getting the selected element metadata and assigning those attributes into the annotation class. In order to do that, we again went to a similar process, just traversing through all of the metadata and actually finding the relevant information based on what it is selected on the editor, based on the information that we selected to show on the editor. Yeah. So yeah, as you can see here, it's all the information as in case, category, and document that this selected object is coming from. And yeah, and I think like that's the main part of how we select and assign the annotation to the classes. Guys, anything to add here? Am I missing anything? Or do you guys have any questions? Share on the code. Just please feel free.
I mean, I think if there are no questions, we can go to a part that is actually sending an annotation. So, right? Okay. So I guess first maybe I'll share my screen and just talk a little bit about Speckle for Unity, because I think like it's I'm not sure how new the development is. I think the Speckle team started to develop Speckle for Unity about a year ago for Speckle 2. It is still a bit work in progress. Maybe I'll just start with the okay. Let me just share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen? Yep, okay. So basically, like I mentioned, Unity for Speckle, it's probably relatively new connection comparing to other more established like Rhino and the Grasshopper. And you can get their project from the Speckle guides. So it's a similar format to this workshop. To get the Speckle for Unity, you need to get the repository. So at first, obviously, we need to install Speckle account and Speckle Manager. So hopefully you already have it. And we won't be going to their repository. It's something only that I will be showcasing. However, you can do it later to play with it. So if you go to repository, you'll just get the Unity project as well that you can open and play with it. So I will just very quickly show how it looks. So that is what you are getting straight away from GitHub, from Speckle GitHub. It's a Unity project. As you can see on the right side, I have attached the Stream Manager script that is actually connecting to my Speckle account. You can see my Unity, right? Okay. And it's actually reading all my current streams that I'm having. There are a few components in the UI that I set for you, and you can use them. And actually, we'll do a very quick exercise just to show you how that works. So I have my Rhino with a nice city design. So I'm using I'm referencing that in my geometry. Then I'm putting the stream ID, and I'm adding the commit message. So commit message would be, like, if you're not familiar with Git environment, the commit message would be just sort of a title of this send, let's say. So I can click send. Okay, so I send it to Speckle. I have a confirmation that I successfully pushed 17 objects. And now I could go to Unity. I will enter the play mode. Yeah, okay, and as you can see, it actually reads my stream called My Nice City, right? So I have all of them, but I'm picking My Nice City. And I will add the receiver. So this is something that is shipped directly with GitHub, so we don't, with their repository, so we don't need to add an extra functionality. We add a receiver, right? And this is, it automatically refers me to the branches that I have. I'm gonna pick the main branch because this one is secret. So we go to the main branch and it will receive. Right, and wow, yeah, we have our city. As you can see, the default material is applied. So you have to change the material. Like I said, the Speckle is currently work in progress development, so it applies all of the default materials. It will probably come later to add the meshes. So for now, for example, you could see that in my Rhino, I did have a colorful mesh. Those colors are not transferred, but we are hoping to.
Actually, sorry, Justyna, that's a great point, which we forgot to mention before, that in current reflects development, let's say, there is no way to pass mesh colors. So it's something that we have sort of, marked and raised, and hopefully as we can see that being implemented in the future. I guess it has to do, as we said, the fact that Unity is predominantly a game engine, and game development in a way has its own culture and methods of producing the geometries and the textures and all the assets, basically the way the assets are produced that are participating within a game. but at the same time, we do know that mesh coloring is like probably one of the most obvious, I guess, strategies within AC that create to produce, rather than producing textures, let's say, that comes out of all sorts of analysis software, but etc. So all that information is actually lost when you send it from Rhino or Revit or whatever to Unity through Reflect, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a quick demonstration what the default sort of Speckle Unity repository is giving us. And yeah, just because you know, the point of our sort of exercise was to send annotations, so something that is not really geometry, we had to build on top of it. Wait, why am I hearing myself?
To reflect.
Now? Do you hear my voice twice? No? Okay, I think I don't hear myself. Ignore me. It's very distracting, actually. I can't. I need to. Okay. Give us a second, guys.
So this is because of the internal conference system, I guess, that Reflect has.
Oh no, it's okay. I almost can't hear myself. That's great. Okay, Paris solved my issue. So I will. So basically, yeah, like I mentioned, Speckle for Unity right now is sending only geometry. So it doesn't really send any metadata. And I think even if we attach the attributes to our Rhino, it doesn't really send it. It's only mesh and converts it to a Unity mesh. So obviously we wanted to set annotations. So we did like a small custom script that is that changed a bit the way that Speckle is actually receiving and sending the messages. So you could see on the right, and that's if you have Unity project open, and if you navigate to the interoperability object, and then under this object there is Speckle Manager object. If you click on it, you should see the inspector window, and the first component is a stream manager. That's default Speckle component that will automatically connect to Speckle. So that's where I can pick my branch. So for example, right now I will pick the branch for this workshop, and you can see that it will actually update my account and load all the information that I have on this stream. It usually takes quicker, but obviously now, let me stop sharing for a second. Why is this? Wait, I'm just changing the stream. Yeah. Wow, okay, it worked. I can share again. Okay, so I've changed my branch to interoperability. I changed my stream to interoperability, and I can read all the branches from that stream. So this is the default account, the default component, and now we'll go to our custom component. So basically, what we did in the custom component, we actually changed a bit of the way how Speckle sends and receives annotations. So we can actually send and receive annotations that Paris was showcasing a while ago, and the ones that are hanging above the building. So very quickly, I'll just explain what is happening in the code. So basically, my Speckle Annotation Manager is having two main functions. One is send annotation, and another one is receive. Actually, for consistency, it should be named receive annotation. Yeah, let's amend it later, guys. Yeah, so okay, send annotation. What we are doing is I'm reading all of the annotations that Paris code is storing, and I'm converting them to the type of information that Speckle will be able to send. And now the Speckle created a class base, and class base is like the most basic class that you can almost probably like a struct if you're familiar with programming, that is handling that can be sent and can be received. So if you actually dig into the Speckle code, you will see this base class appearing quite a lot. So what we thought we'll do is to create our own class that will be inheriting the base class. This is something that is as well recommended in the Speckle guides. So if you read on the guides online how to actually make your own class, that's the sort of recommended way, just because the Speckle understands this class. So what we did is, let's go. Oh no, that's not here. Wait. Okay, here. So we created our new, our own class that is inheriting from the base class. And this class is having a set of fields that are relevant for our annotations, right? So for example, it has a Revit element ID, and we want to keep that information because, for example, we want to send back those streams back to Dynamo or back to Revit and actually visualize them. So we want to have reference which element this comment is for. Then we have annotation ID. This is purely for a technical reason to have sort of unique identifier of each annotation. Then we have assignee, so that's something that Paris was showing as well. So that's for who this comment is and the message of the comment. We have very optional other field, which is a mesh, and that's sort of we are hoping to take this project further and to actually add sort of like a doodle functionality that you can send later. This is, however, like it's not there yet. It's a work in progress. I guess it will be at some point. And yeah, so this class we are sending to Speckle. So if I will, yeah, send. Okay. So what I'm doing here, I'm actually, yeah, I'm taking all of the annotations so those are annotations that Paris is storing, and the one that you could see above the building, and I'm converting them to my annotations. So those are the ones that actually the Speckle will understand, right? So I'm selecting each element. For each element, I'm casting that to my class, and then this is just a technical sort of function. I'm converting that to a list. It's not really that relevant. So I have a list of annotations. Then I create a new base class, and this class, this is something that Speckle will understand. And I'm assigning my objects, so my annotations, I'm assigning as a value for the key objects. So this class base will have a key objects and a value, my annotations. And then I'm using a Speckle send function that is sending those objects. If I go into the send function, it's slightly modified from the original Speckle, and not too much. The only difference is that I think the default Speckle is handling the game objects. We converted that to a base so we could send our metadata. So this is the send function, and now I quickly go and explain the receive function. So receive function, it works the other way around. It receives the objects. So basically, I'm using a lot of default Speckle functionality. So as you can see, I'm just using basically their receive. So it was already there. We did modify it slightly in the same way as we modified the send function. So we want to work on the base class, not on the game object class. So as you can see here, I'm receiving from the stream my objects, and then I'm getting everything what is under the key objects. So I mentioned a second ago that I was saving my annotations under the key objects. So that's why now I'm receiving as well that under the key objects. I'm casting it to the base class, and once I have a base class, I'm converting all of those to my annotation class. So this is just a function that will take a base and will automatically convert it to annotation class. Just because the annotation class we can understand and we can translate back into the 3D environment. Yeah, and that's it. Because once I have my annotation class, that's how I can visualize it back in the Unity. So let's try to test it. great. So yeah, I am on my interoperability stream on the main branch. Finger crossed, I will try to receive something. Oh, I did, great. So as you can see, there are 4 annotations here that are coming from the stream. We can check them as well if you will go to your Speckle Manager. So in my Speckle Manager online, I can actually see all the commits, and I can go to latest commit for that stream. And you could see the number of elements is actually 4. And I have 4 annotations, just because this was our class that we created. So I have those 4 annotations, and that's exactly what I can see here. And now we can try to add our own annotation. So to add our own annotation, we need to click on this icon here. That will allow us to select object, right? So I'm selecting the object, and I can add, I don't know, is too hard for me. And this is common, for example, for Georgios. And now I can send it to Speckle. You can now see that I can see the 5th icon appearing. And actually, if we go back to our Speckle Manager, if I refresh, I should see, oops, still for objects. No, that's because I was in a previous commit. Let's go to the last commit, which you can see is pushed less than a minute ago. So if I enter it, I can see now I have 5 elements. Okay, and that should work with multiple users. So basically, we could all be in this space, adding comments. Am I missing anything?
No, I mean, I think that's the gist of it. I mean, I'm wondering if people have any sort of questions, if anybody's sort of following, maybe mostly in terms of the logic. As we said, like the good thing about this masterclass is that, of course, it's recorded at the moment. So if we have people at different levels, I guess, in terms of coding experience, I think it's, it'd be really useful to just go back at it and look at it again at your own time and pace, and just try to get. I think there's something fundamental in, for example, if Speckle is one of these platforms that you're at the moment experimenting with and integrating, even the fact that just how do you add a class, let's say, in a way that a base class in a way that Speckle actually likes. As we said, the guys are providing a lot of instructions on their documentation. Speckle is as well another open source project, which makes it even more amazing in a way. So yeah, it'd be interesting to get any sort of feedback or questions that you might have. I guess, as we said, like in the spirit of the hackathon and the whole AECtech symposium, etc. The proof of concept is, I guess, even more powerful than the actual application. The moment you have the ability to send and receive information from Unity with Speckle, literally sky's the limit. Annotations is something, as Paris touched upon briefly, because it's something that we find very useful here to be able to kind of capture comments in a live collaborative session, let's say, and potentially being fed up, as we said, back to the ecosystem, right? So the next step is to, in a way, see how, because now these are Speckle streams and we know that there are all these different clients, it's very straightforward to start thinking of, from the simplest, let's say, application of having a spreadsheet where actually it captures all these comments and the people who are responsible, and therefore it already brings a level of structure in a way of how you handle the changes that are happening in the model, all the way up to sort of start bringing them and visualizing all this information back to Revit or Rhino, etc. So in a way, that's like the full circle, starting from Revit and Rhino, ending all the way back to Rhino and Revit. Of course, on top of that, we can mean, we're just leveraging here the annotation system of Reflect, but of course, you know, if we start adding the functionality of producing, let's say, annotations of any sort of type, even in a VR environment, right? So comments in VR, even objects, right? Simple objects like primitives, etc., that are implying, let's say, design changes. You know, this starts to become a very powerful, let's say, environment which plugs in directly to our existing ecosystem. So that's in a way the value that this tries to bring in, and augmented sketching, let's say, environment, if you want, and coordinate, and in more or less formal, depending on how you want to utilize it, collaboration system. So I think, yeah, okay, that's great. Justyna, you're going to show us how we can quickly receive that stream.
Yes. So, of course, we are talking about feedbacking the information back into models or somewhere else. So I guess the first step that is probably the simplest is to import our annotations into Excel. So we have a spreadsheet of all of the comments for the project. So like, it is quite simple. Once we have, for that we just need to have installed the Excel connector. So you can do it from your Speckle Manager. You just go to connectors and navigate to Excel, and that's where you have an install button, and quite straightforward. So then when you run Excel, you should be able to see that icon. Once you run it, it should you don't need to log in. It will, same as for Unity, it will take the login from the Speckle Manager. And if you don't see your streams, you can add a stream, and then you can look for what are the available streams. Then you can add your own stream. So I added the stream interoperability, and I just need to click receive. I will click filter and receive. Right, so now I can see that last change was pushed 3 minutes ago by Paris from Unity, and I can see that it's a list of 5 objects, and each object is an annotation. So to import that into Excel, you just select the first cell where you want to import the information, and you click the small download icon. Okay, great. So now we have all of the information that was in that we're holding in our annotation class. So our ID, assignee, Revit element ID, message, and speckle type. And the same thing we could do in in Dynamo, in Revit. Actually, I don't know, Yorgos, if you have opened your project, we did very literally 2 hours ago. Yorgos did a very quick prototype of actually how to receive annotation in Revit, and I mentioned that it's 2 hours ago, just to show how quick and easy that was. Obviously, if there is reason, you can progress with a bit more detailed Revit plugin that it actually displays on your comments. Yeah, should I? Okay.
Right. So.
Oh, sorry. Right. So as Justyna was saying, I mean, and like the power of some of these tools is the immediacy and the speed at which you can really prototype stuff, right? And before you spend the time to create, let's say, more robust solutions of embedded plugins, etc. So what I quickly had here was basically now that now that these comments are in Speckle with a Speckle stream, I can literally like receive the stream, right? So way I showed you before, like on Speckle in Grasshopper, there's of course the receiver, right? So, I mean, to be honest, let me just build that again. So we've got the account, right? This stream list gives all the streams that are available in your account. So you quickly just iterate through them, just using they're stored here based on the time they've been uploaded. So the first one is always the latest one. So I'm just picking that first stream, right? And I can just receive that, right? So receiving, and it's here. Now, you can see here that I have received these 5, there you go, 5 base objects, right? So it's the objects that Justyna sent. And now I need to expand the speckle object. Where is it? Expand the speckle object. So just flag this here, then it actually deserializes and reads the content, right? So you can see those 5 elements, attributes, sorry, yeah, correct. So the 5 attributes that each of these base objects have. So just flag this panel so you can see the annotation ID, you can see the assignees, right? And obviously here we've got the element Revit ID, right? Which I guess is, let me just connect that for a second. Got the element ID, right? And finally, of course, we've got the actual messages, right? So these are the annotations themselves. Now, at the moment, so I've picked that up from Rhino, yeah, into Grasshopper, but we sort of mentioned in the beginning that there is this tool of Rhino.Inside, right, which allows you to have Rhino inside Revit. So this is effectively, this is not just Rhino, this is Rhino inside, running inside my Revit model, right? So Rhino.Inside lives here. With if you have Rhino.Inside installed, you can fire up Rhino within Revit. So at the moment, I have actually received the speckle stream from inside a Grasshopper file within Revit. Now with Rhino.Inside, we know that we've got this direct functionality of actually accessing BIM elements, right? So all I'm doing here is I'm using this from Rhino.Inside, right? So Rhino.Inside has this full functionality inside Grasshopper, right? Really developed. If you're a Revit user, I would highly recommend you, and you're a Rhino Grasshopper user, I would highly recommend you to jump into Rhino.Inside. It's a fantastic tool, really useful. It has made our lives a lot easier and actually has given us a lot of power in terms of what we can, how we can leverage these two platforms. So within Rhino.Inside, there is this component which allows you basically to identify Revit elements based on their ID. And their ID, as we know, it's an attribute, right, that we have sent from Reflect. So we can just quickly, just get those elements, right? And first of all, I can already see them, that I can preview them in my Rhino viewport. And therefore, that means that they are in my Revit, right? So if I go back, then, I mean, literally just quickly prototyping here. Nothing really fancy. I'm just adding the text, right? And some markers. Yeah. Let's switch that up. So that means that I can already have inside my Revit interface very quickly all these objects that we've had a comment, right? And that's real-time connected, right? So if Justyna adds a comment, then I will be able to see that here. And obviously, again, this is a proof of concept. It doesn't mean that this is necessarily something that we want to push forward. As we said, a fully fleshed out version of that would actually be a Revit plugin itself, which reads all these comments. And given the fact that we have access to the license, the user, let's say, who is actively in that Revit session, you can actually get directly pinged, right, from notifications that say that there are all these elements that you need to be looking at, right, which really optimizes the whole process and connects things in a really, I guess, powerful and data-rich way, right? Through all this loop, in a way, we haven't lost any information about the BIM elements. We have only enriched them with more metadata. Now, to that, actually, I mean, are there any sort of questions? I mean, this should be quite straightforward. If you have any experience with Speckle or Rhino.Inside, etc. But I think on the chat, somebody posted a really interesting question. Yeah, Mona. So there's a question of like, is it possible? Justyna, you've already picked it up. I think it's an interesting point, right? Of how much you would want to have the capability to change the BIM geometry, let's say, or the BIM information inside the BIM model. So the first time we brought that up, for example, like we can probably talk about our own experience here. We brought this topic to our BIM team, let's say. We had this, a lot of people got worried, right? Like, because actually the BIM model is this ground truth, right? So it's a good question of whether you want to have that capability. Technically speaking, you can, right? But it's a question of whether you want to do that. I mean, the way we're looking at it at the moment is more about creating a parallel, let's say, stream of actually assessing what that change would be. And then, as an if there is a consensus, then that can actually be updated. But there is nothing that could stop you, let's say, from doing that in a way. Right. Yeah, at this point, I guess we would get any other, are there any other questions that people might have? Is there anything that you would like us to look at in more detail, let's say in even more detail, let's say from the sort of workflow that we have looked at? Otherwise, I'm wondering, Paris, if we can, because we saw you in the metaverse before.
Hey, I just wanted to say
Yeah.
it's becoming really clear so far. I really appreciate the process and what you're defining as what's important about, you know, how you guys have manipulated the data and how that's working back and forth from the different platforms. I think, I mean, I would personally love to be able to actually see it in action because I haven't been able to sign in to Unity Reflect yet to push anything and play around. So as much as I understand the flow, I want to be able to do it before this all ends.
Absolutely. So there seems to be a bit of an issue with this verification, which we're trying to resolve, at the moment.
Yeah, am I right that the license to this account will be there available for a while, right? Yeah. So with this account, you're getting for a month. Am I right? For a month, you're getting the Unity Pro and Unity Reflect. So you can, and this project will be live. So you will be able to test it. I mean, for the next month, whenever you are, whatever you want. However, yes, I agree that it would be great to solve it now. I guess this is something that, yeah, we didn't predict that it would be issued that. Yeah.
Well, maybe out of curiosity, I'm wondering if any of the people in this workshop so far have been able to access, given like you guys sending codes and stuff. I know you're looking at getting rid of the requirement for a code now, right?
I think some people managed to do that already because we got some feedback. I think, Joan, were you able? And a couple of other people, I think, have already.
I wasn't able to do it either.
Does everyone have the Speckle account? If you do, you could send me your login details, and in the meantime, I will add you. I mean, that's for later. I will add you as a collaborator to a stream that is holding the examples of annotations that we are sending. So you can put them in the chat, and if you put your Speckle account, like it's something additional, but you'll have access to. You'll be able to send as well and receive our annotation stream. So you can put it in the chat, and then I'll add you.
Do you mean just like our emails or like passwords?
Yeah, I think it's your Speckle login.
Okay.
And yeah, I think Paris is preparing sort of to show the VR part. So hopefully in a few minutes, we'll see him in a headset.
Awesome, thanks.
Out of curiosity, has anybody here tried to play with Reflect before, or is it the first time you sort of engaged with a platform?
I've been meaning to.
Okay.
So first time.
It's great. I mean, it's been around for some time, but I think it's the latest developments that have really integrated into the way we work. And it's worth. I'm not sure if we mentioned that the whole geometry optimization is happening through Pixies, right? So basically, there is a major part where Unity just takes, on the back end, all the geometry that it gets exported and gets meshed, and it really simplifies and optimizes. Actually, doesn't simplify, it optimizes it so that it's, we don't kill the poly count, let's say, of what you send inside Unity, which is I guess it has been one of these bottlenecks for a long time, at least in terms of this real-time update of information.
Right. Should I just jump on some like VR action here for you guys? Right. Let me just share my screen again. Can come here. Okay. Take this off for a sec. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Right. All right. Yeah. So similar to what we saw before, all the UI functionality has been traversed into the controller UI. So similar to what you showed before, here we have yeah, some of these dashboards attached to an anchor of the controller, the dashboard that we used on the previous workshop. Again, similar to what you saw before on the Unity side. Here we have the annotation window, so I can actually see my annotations here in VR. And yeah, like, I can maybe turn them off here. All right, yeah. Okay, so yeah, so similar to how we used Reflect before, yeah, just a quick run around. The development here on the VR side is again um, very well improved, if I can say. Here on the newest Reflect version, we're using an Oculus Quest 2 with Airlink. So at the moment, I'm yeah, transferring all the frames through the Steam VR over with on my PC. And yeah, so practically what I'll do is try to receive those comments again so we can see what that could. Right. And you can see the selected objects there. Maybe. So yeah, similar to how we did before, I can click and select objects and see their metadata here on the VR side. I have all the reflex functionality here in VR, so I think this is quite good actually. I'll traverse and like have a more immersive experience for architects and designers here on the reflect side. Something else I could do, and yeah, something that I would like to show here on the on Reflect is actually the ability we did try that. Yeah, we thought that this would be a nice addition for our design teams to actually give them the ability to sketch on things. So we introduced like a simple VR doodle here. So you are able to sketch on the 3D space. Let's see. Yeah, so oh, a little bit curvy, I would say. All right. Yeah, so similar to how Justyna was describing the process before, I think this was, again, like a primitive way, a really simple and abstract way to actually assign some additional elements on those annotations. So I can select this object, add an annotation, and like use the VR space to actually sketch and imagine how I would like this element to be. So yeah, I could yeah, maybe come here.
I mean, just to add, like similar to what we showed before, obviously these annotations could be sent into Speckle and be received directly from another platform. So in a way, without necessarily affecting the geometries, you already have some you know, indication of, again, sketches and all that. You know, again, it's all about that informal information, you know, information that sometimes gets it doesn't get integrated, let's say, within a streamlined data reach process. Question about using Rhino.Inside in Unity versus Unity Reflect. Aha, that's a good question. So, Pari, I think I can hear myself. Yeah, sorry.
Sure.
Can you?
Sure, I can unmute.
Yep, thanks. So yeah, I mean, obviously we have played with Rhino.Inside Unity, like when it first became available. there is something important in, as we said, in Reflect being developed by Unity, because we consider that this is the way that Unity wants information to exist in its own ecosystem, right? There is absolutely, yeah, I mean, there is an element there of how much you want to prototype versus how much functionality already comes off the shelf. And in that sense, we do consider, like, you know, a lower hanging fruit and a lower entry point, let's say, of Unity Reflect, as opposed to Rhino.Inside. Also, we shouldn't forget the Reflect Review, right? That product which literally just allows you to push, like once somebody has pushed the model, just go there and have a coordination sort of conferencing session, right? And of course, that's something that one could develop in one way or the other, but we have the Unity team behind that, right? So it's really, oh, we got multiple angles of artists in the metaverse. A bit of backstage. So yeah, I guess that's our, yeah, that's the way we would look at it at the moment. Yes, it's certainly possible, but there's a trade-off there between how much functionality you need to build yourself versus how much is there, plus the whole, you know, capacity of extending the ecosystem, let's say, like the client, so you can just bring information into Reflect. Also, the fact, you know, the fact that it's optimized, it's VR and AR ready. We haven't had the opportunity to show like AR, but actually Reflect gives you the, like, if you can download the Reflect app on your phone, on your tablets, and you can access the very same model that Paris is looking at the moment on VR, right? Just log in with your account, and then you're there, right? So yeah, I guess that would be an answer. But again, super keen to hear your thoughts as well. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm reading now Kristen's comment. Absolutely, Kristen. I think that, yeah, that's the way to do it in a way. That's the lowest hanging fruit at the moment. And given that there is so much functionality, let's say for a confident, like if people have experience with Grasshopper, manipulating attributes is a very straightforward sort of process. So just leveraging that and coupling it with Reflect. I mean, one of the things that is not happening at the moment, but it would be great if that was able, was to stream information directly from Grasshopper, right? Without actually requiring to be baked, if you want, into Rhino, which I think opens sort of different set of possibilities. But yeah, hopefully we will be able to see these sort of developments in the future with Reflect. Any sort of other questions or comments? Right. Yeah. So, okay. Yes. So Edwin asks if we have looked at enhancing the materials and the visual effect. So that's something. Absolutely, right. So we're in Unity, basically. The Reflect Develop lives inside Unity. So whatever you do, like whatever you see, basically, in terms of visual output from any game out there which is developed in Unity, is within reach, and that's what's really exciting about it. Unity themselves, they have been working on improved, let's say, versions of current Reflect. So we have had a look, let's say, at what's coming up, and it's really exciting in terms of like exactly the material fidelity, let's say, and the representation capabilities. But again, as we said, you're in Unity. If you know, the better you are in Unity, I guess the more you can take that further. Another aspect that we're really interested in is like real-time simulations running inside Unity. This is one of the aspects. Sorry, I'm just how.
Yeah, I think the material question I can answer. So the question was that have you looked at enhancing the materials and visual effect? Can you Reflect do that like Unity? So basically, what you are seeing, those are materials. They are in Unity. I mean, they're like in Unity Reflect, but the materials are then directly read from Revit. So I would say like we haven't looked at that yet. As it was not a main focus for us. However, yes, you could. I know one way would be to just improve the materials in Revit. However, if you can't do it, you could have your own script on top that would make sort of conversion. So you'd read Revit material and you would assign some more elaborate Unity material. So you can assign Unity materials. Those are just that those are the materials that Unity is directly reading from Revit. But yes, you would have to do like a bit of custom development. And then the next question, how the model with analysis is sent to Reflect. So the model with analysis was pushed with the Reflect plugin that I think Georgios was showing. It's at the beginning of the class. So once you get the Reflect, in Rhino, I think there is a function, start Reflect or Reflect Review export. And you will see a small window that it will be exactly the same window that we could see in our Revit. So you can open the Reflect, you can export the data, and you can sync as well. So that's how we send it. Just one button, you select which project, and that's it. So that is handled by Reflect as well.
Yeah, literally. I mean, I've just jumped quickly into Rhino, and I have I've just export, basically, right? So if I hit export here, they will be similar to whatever happened previously with Revit. Reflect gets prompted, and you just upload the data, and that's it. So you get your mesh analysis into the same project. Right. If somebody else actually, there's, for example, I don't know, a SketchUp client, right? If so, if somebody on the project is using SketchUp and there is information there, you can do exactly the same thing and just collate all all different models into that Reflect model, which is accessed by Unity, right? So literally, yeah, as we've shown before. I don't know. Do you see my? I'm not sure if you can see. Screen, yeah. So right, as I said, get prompted back to this window. We can create a new project or send everything to the existing project. I'm not going to push it again because we've pushed it already, so we don't want to duplicate stuff. But yeah. Any sort of other questions or comments? As Justyna said, with the account, and apologies again for that sort of hiccup, we'll be sharing later on the email the account actually, so you can have, as we said, it's going to be a 30 days trial of Pro and Unity Pro and Unity Reflect, so you can test it yourselves. And I mean, it'd be interesting. I don't know, like how many of you would be exploring any sort of Unity-based solutions for the hackathon during the weekend. It'd be interesting to see any developments happening around Reflect. Any other questions or comments?
I'm curious. So I love that you guys are presenting something that's super rudimentary right now. Like you're showing your proof of concept. Have you actually tried to use this on any projects so far, or gotten any feedback from using it with, say, a client, or the intended use, right?
Yeah. I mean, exactly. I think, and it's interesting because, like, at this stage of the development, what we consider as client is actually our colleagues. To be fair.
Sure, for sure. Yes.
And I think, yeah, exactly. I think it's that level. That's where we see most value, right? That way of communicating information that like previously just existed in a document, a printed document, or some axonometrics of colored meshes. whereas he feels that now you can have parallel conversations, let's say, within the same environment. So there is the actual case where we're looking into, you know, the design aspects, and then at the same time understanding why a certain decision has been taken, which is why we have sort of looked into, I mean, environmental analysis, we said, is like low-hanging fruit because it's so important. We're looking at the moment at potentially expanding the, let's say, the information that we get there. And as I said, like, we're equally interested into some real-time simulations that are happening in the game engine environment, let's say like wind simulation, etc., which is the sort of next step that we want to take that. But yeah, I mean, that's, yeah, that is, let's say, the level that we're looking at the moment. I think there is a lot of traction on the, exactly on the coordination, let's say, aspect of it. Literally just being able to provide comments and pinging people. So people get notified of like what do they need to kind of work and like focus their attention on, and just, you know, get a quick, like, increase the efficiency, let's say, of these design iterations. I think that's where we see at the moment most value, especially with some of the, you know, let's say the bigger, the more complex team structures that we happen to have over here at Grimshaw with some of our, let's say, bigger projects. Does that sort of make sense?
Awesome. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
So answering the next question about using Speckle with other gaming engines like Unreal. So no, we haven't, but I know that Speckle is building the connection for Unreal as well. I think it's probably still a work in progress. There is as well, same as for Unity, there is a repository that you can get and maybe contribute. And yeah, I think the development is pretty much similar to Unity, but we personally haven't used it just for the, I guess, practical reason, because for the XR we use Unity.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious in a way if anybody has tried, for example, Rhino.Inside for Unreal, etc. I mean, we know that there's solutions out there available, but has anybody here had an experience like they would like to share, let's say, and see whether, you know, if there's commonality, let's say, with some of the things we have sort of presented? Maybe no.
I guess it's a no.
Maybe no. Right. Any sort of other questions people might have?
I would be
a question. So what are you typically using in your workflow for rendering, and how do you, like, is that coordinated with your VR model? Like, do you use Enscape, for example, and do you, like, how do you keep track all the materials in your VR, in your Excel model and Revit? Yeah.
I guess there are two parts to that question. I'll get the first one, which has to do more with the day-to-day processes. I guess, yeah, as you mentioned, I think solutions like Enscape are super powerful and like very well integrated, let's say, within the workflows. The immediacy of having, a VR-ready solution like Enscape within Rhino and Revit predominantly is something, yeah, which is very heavily adopted in the office. Also the fact that you can very quickly, even with simple mobile devices, which are readily available to a lot of people, even a simple 360 might be interesting. A series of 360s might be interesting to just push the discussion, let's say, on designs a bit faster. So yeah, that's definitely happening. at the same time, let's say for more curated applications of extended realities, we do have within DT, as Paris explained, there's a, a branch, let's say, which is looking particularly into that. And I'm sure, Paris, if you want to talk a bit about workflows and, you know, applications.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, so we have the tried. We are in a trial for a few actual VR applications. So if I can put some names out, maybe Iris VR. It was one of the newest tries that we did here in the office. And actually, yeah, as Georgios said, Enscape has been widely adopted by the office as a VR platform to actually export, you know, like the latest VR. Enscape has also executable, so that you can actually use all VR headsets we have available, Oculus, Vive, with Enscape, with the executable Enscape. So that is, yeah, widely adopted. We have tried a few different applications with Iris, we have tried Prospect, and we have tried, what's it called? Right. I'm not exactly there. All right. So, but the good thing is that, yeah, so Iris, yeah, Iris VR and Prospect. I would say, like, I'm trying to respond to Sabrina here and the question that she makes. Do you feel like Reflect Viewer is comparable to Iris VR and Prospect? So in our case, and like with the way that we look at things here, the DT office, the DT team, I would say basically that Reflect is quite bigger than Iris VR and Prospect in the way that we can actually manipulate some of the information that are in there, not just like have it as a viewer. And I think like this is where we like our focus is at the moment, trying to, you know, like in a way prune and use this information coming into a VR environment.
Absolutely. I mean, just to add to that, I think there is an element there of the black box versus an open box, and we're really into exploring. Like, we really don't like black boxes. We really want to make sure that we can, you know, play with things and open things and break them down and put them back again. And through that process, we sort of learn and we push. So, as we said, I think there's great value in all of these off-the-shelf solutions, like Iris VR and Prospect and so many other platforms that are out there. There's something important as well about the adoption, let's say, and making sure that our architects are joining, let's say, the architects join us in this, you know, journey of expanding the tools that we use for to convey our narratives, let's say, right? But at some point, the capacity of actually being able to add your own functionality, I think, becomes critical. And in terms of workflows, I think there's always a point at those projects that we're working on that we have to take the next step and move into a custom-made environment, whether that be for a, you know, as we said, an external public engagement, let's say, client engagement, other stakeholders. There has to be a point where, rather than just relying on what's you know, an app is giving you, you just go there and you add your own, let's say, take. Yeah. So I think we were all just reading Kristen's point on the chat. That's why there's some radio silence. So she says, yeah, yes, Yeah, no, I mean, it's exciting, right? So I mean, obviously, it's great to see that certain technologies have permeated like so fast, let's say, within the industry. I think there are very good reasons about that. We have been wanting this sort of tech in our hands for some time, and one of the things I think we've always been discussing in these sort of forums is the fact that a lot of our time, let's say, in the past has been spent to build those bridges, right? So there is an aspect of us taking over the work, you know, that could naturally sit, let's say, within the software vendors, of building all those connections, right? And seeing them actually providing their solutions as their software, let's say, prefers things to be done. it's really helpful. And I think, yeah, as Christian said, like the adoption is, you know, quite massive, to be honest. I think we sort of see something similar as game engines have been picking up, obviously, for some time now. That's where it gets a bit interesting with Reflect. We can definitely see the power of the adoption of Reflect, provided that there is a basic skill set, let's say, there in terms of Unity development. Um, yeah.
If I can pick up here Sabrina's comment as well. So Sabrina actually said that it's really hard to actually get people on board, like, well, because Reflect Viewer has a limited feature, limited feature functionality compared to other VR applications, which I totally get. I think, like, we struggled with this a little bit here in the office, and we are very glad that we have the opportunity to actually test and use Reflect this way. And after doing those tests and trials with Reflect, we can practically say that, you know, like, most of the features that are lacking of Reflect, I think you know, like, we kind of take them back with the ability to actually develop custom solutions on top of Reflect. And again, I think I said that in the beginning, but I'll say that again. Big kudos to the Unity Reflect guys. I think their roadmap, it's quite comprehensive, and they have, you know, like, having a public roadmap that anyone can go in and, like, submit their thoughts and ideas on how the product should develop from now on. I think this is really powerful in our community. Yes, and, like, yeah, if you have a look at the public roadmap there, I think there is a mention of quite a few features that are existing in other applications, and they will be on like, future Reflect releases. So I think that's touching your point there, Sabrina.
Yeah, also the fact that, yeah, as I think Justyna pointed out, I mean, there's a comment about Dynamo, of course, like through Speckle, as we said, like the amount of clients gets increased by the month. So in a way, even if, you know, there is not necessarily one, I mean, in terms of mindset, the mindset that we have in the team and something we're trying to communicate, we're not necessarily trying to find that silver bullet. I personally, if you ask me, I don't think there is a silver bullet. There will ever be a silver bullet. It's about, like, you know, that one tool that will do everything. It's about combining and testing, and, as I said, breaking things and seeing what works. So, you know, if Reflect doesn't push stuff back yet, and it has only a couple of clients, then we bring something Speckle, which has the capacity to push things back in a hand, you know, like 10, 15 different clients. Technically, because there is, I mean, as Justyna said, there is already a Reflect Speckle implementation for Unreal. Through that, you can already have that, you know, basic functionality of annotation, exactly what we showed in Unreal today, right? So, you know, it depends on, like, what is your comfort zone, and, like, just tailoring that functionality around that. Yeah, Power BI, exactly, right? So again, I think the difference between the sort of more traditional exports like world, it's the fact that we try to make sure that we can have data-rich, interoperable processes where information, you know, stays with a level of fidelity, without corruption, without reduction, and only with a capability for augmentation, right? I think this is a sort of principle. I'm conscious of time as well. I think we're reaching the limit. Hopefully, yeah, hopefully you found this useful. As I said, like in the beginning, we're really excited ourselves for having the opportunity. Of course, big thanks to the TD Core team for inviting us for another masterclass. Yeah, I mean, AECtech, as we said in the past, there are these points of reference, I think, for the industry. We're really excited to see the symposium tomorrow, and actually the hackathon the next in this coming up weekend. Yeah, and I think it's been great to have met you all. Hopefully we'll manage to see each other in some sort of real or the sort of metaverse kind of environment. in the near future.